feeling like I'm Akademiks. Can't ride away.
I agree. What's going to happen is going to be explosive. Because if Christina Karam takes that stand, I don't care. I think she loves Diddy too. So, all rise, people. All y'all, you know what I mean? We are back in court day 15. Garcia has immunity. He's on the stand, and there's going to be a video, a fight video played, and then there's going to be Jane. So, for the people who thought that Mia was Jane Doe, no. Mia is just under a pseudonym, but there's actually actual Jane Doe, seemingly. So the courtroom deputy says marshals keep bringing the defendant out, and apparently Donaldson was in the holding cell with Combs. Summeranium says let's start with a compilation video. I got this letter, and they're talking about a letter. The judge says, is Mr. Garcia competent enough to testify about the video given his position in the hotel security? Now, what attorney? Remember that woman attorney we were talking about? She was right, actually. Simone. Let's pull up her videos today, too. We now have 4 people that we could lean on. Attorney Simone, yeah. She's been doing a Diddy trial. This one, yeah. Yep. This has been her. Okay. So the reason why we're doing that is that she had made a guess to say, I think this Garcia guy probably works for the hotel, and he's probably the guy who got the $50,000 or $100,000 in the bribe money or the payoff or hush money that Diddy paid for this video not to come out. Now we get to find out the judge is saying, okay, this person works for hotel security. Steiner then says, I'm not really asking him about an aspect. Judge is saying we are not using the correct cell phone video, so this could get under the rules. Tenny Gargo says, the way the video is cut makes it appear that Mr. Combs came right after Ventura, and she didn't, or maybe it meant he didn't. Steiner then says, I'd like to address his timestamps on security videos. They are routinely inaccurate. The judge says the defense concern could be allayed by inserting breaks between the clips. Since they will be testifying, it's hard for them to be editing clips at the same time. We don't think it's misleading. Judge says, the defense could cross-examine on this. Okay, now, what they're talking about, this is a person from the hotel video we've seen. So this Intercontinental video, the longer version, right? I think this is it. In this video, is this the full one? Okay, we see Flores. There's a lot of stuff going on. Diddy's team is objecting to this. They're objecting to the jump cuts. So they're saying, if you watch how the video is presented, that the AUSA wants to present it, it shows it like Diddy was there immediately and attacking her immediately after she walked to the elevator, after X, Y, and Z. And they're saying that's not true, and that's misleading, okay? So the judge says, could you edit it? They said, we can't edit it because they'll be testifying. It's be like, all right, the defense could cross-examine on this. So the AUSA then says, given the defense played the video of Mia's birthday party for Combs, we want to introduce the recording of his jail calls about organizing social media celebrations of his birthday, which he views as a way to change the narrative. Oh, my God. That's actually smart. So, chat, Diddy's in jail in MDC currently. When his birthday was about to come up, I believe it's November 4th, he hit up a bunch of people and be like, yo, could y'all post this for me? Could y'all say this? I want y'all to give this sentiment that I could use this to change the narrative that I'm a bad person. So they're saying if they keep trying to introduce videos about a birthday post that they claim our witness is using that, that birthday post is important because she is capping and she's not keeping it real on how her true, demeanor was. Well, how about y'all let us bring in the fact that this guy tried to change the narrative and put out a false depiction of how he was with, everybody else. Anyway, cool. So here it is. AUSA says there was someone broadcasting Mia's name just outside the courthouse in Foley Square yesterday. We would ask, and it said from the back of the courtroom, somebody screams out, "Diddy, they're coming after you, those motherfuckers." Wow. Judge says escort that person out. The judge says the video stamps, how long is it? If it's 40 minutes, it would be good. 403 argument. Ignifilo says this could be an easy fix, but the witness on this will be on the stand in 2 hours. Judge says, where does he live? New York? AUSA says Florida. They bring the jury. All rise. The judge says, jurors, there are some scheduling modifications, including on June 11th. We won't even start till 1 p.m. that day. Also on June 5th, we're going to be going 11 to 4. June 20th, the day after Juneteenth, we're actually going to stop at 1 p.m. So now we know in 2 days, which is June 5th, they're going to go from 11 to 4. The 20th, they're going to stop at 1. And also on the 11th, they're not going to start until 1. Okay. So AUSA says the government calls Eddie Garcia. They says, where did you work on the day in question? They says the Intercontinental Hotel. I was told there was an incident involving Sean Combs. AUSA says, did you see him there? Steele says, we stipulate, and look like he's trying to interrupt. The AUSA is coming back around and says, let me show you your signing sheet for that day. Garcia says, yes, I signed that the week ending on March 10th, 2016. AUSA says, could you monitor the cameras or all the cameras? He says, not at all, but I could do more than one at a time. AUSA says, would you be required to check the monitors? Garcia says, yes. AUSA says, did you initially recognize the individual involved in this incident? Garcia says, not at first, but when I looked closer, yes, I did realize it was Mr. Combs. AUSA says, did you learn about who the second individual was? Garcia says, yes, it was Miss Cassie Ventura. AUSA says, why was law enforcement not called? Garcia says, well, Mrs. Ventura didn't request it. AUSA says, did you review their incident report? Garcia says, yes. There was an attachment that I didn't open on a computer, a video file. AUSA says, did you receive a call? Garcia says, yes. From who? Garcia says, Christina Karam with the New York area code. She asked if I had the video. AUSA says, what did she ask for? Garcia said, the video. She said Mr. Combs had been intoxicated and didn't remember exactly. Steele says objection. The judge sustains it, and then there's a sidebar. Oh, wow. They come back. AUSA says, what did you tell Ms. Karam? Garcia says that we would have to talk to management. Did she reach out again? Garcia says, yes. I got a call from the lobby that she was out there looking for me. AUSA says, well, what did she ask for? Garcia again says, the video. AUSA says, how did you respond to that? Garcia says, told her she had to talk to management or file a subpoena. AUSA says, did you tell her what you saw in the video? Garcia says, yes, I told her. Off the record, I told her that it was bad. AUSA says, did you get another call? Garcia says, yes, from another New York area code. Garcia says, it was Miss Karam. She put someone else on the phone, right? Who? Oh, Garcia says, it was Miss Karam. She put someone else on the phone. AUSA says, who? Garcia says, Mr. Combs. He asked, do you know who I am? AUSA says, what did you say? Garcia says, I said yes. He asked for the video, said he'd been intoxicated, and I told him I can't give him the video. AUSA says, how did he sound? Garcia says, he was talking fast and stuttering. He sounded nervous. AUSA says, did you email management? Garcia says, yes. Bring up GX7R149. He says, what is this? He says, that's the email I sent. Steele says, objection. It was overruled. The email shown has Karam's number on it, not redacted. It says, Combs Diddy says he's a patron and wants to talk to you. AUSA says, did you get any more calls from Ms. Karam? Garcia says, yes, only on my personal number. AUSA says, how did you react? This person says, nervous. Getting into it, chat. Garcia says, Miss Karan passed the phone to Diddy again? AUSA says, what did he say? Garcia says that I sounded like a good guy, that he could help, that something like this could ruin him. He wanted the video. He said if it got out, it would ruin his career. Garcia says, I didn't have access to the server. He told me he believed I could make it happen. He would take care of me. AUSA says, what do you think he meant? He says, money for the video. He said, what did you do? I reached out to my supervisor about it. Who was your supervisor? Bel Medrano. He told me what he would do. He told me he would do it for 50. AUSA says, what do you think that meant? He said he'd give the video for 50,000. What did you do? I called Christina, who put Mr. Combs on. He had called me Eddie, my angel, at that time. So Diddy was flirting with him, trying to get his video up. Said, Mr. Combs told me, I knew you could do it. Let's do it right away. I told Bill Medrano. What did he do? He went to the server room. Then he handed me back a black USB and said, done. The video is in the USB. What did you do? I told Mr. Combs. AUSA says, where did Mr. Combs want to meet? Garcia says the west side of LA. He said, let's get it done. He wanted the video as soon as possible. I told Bill Medrano. He told me to tell others I was on an errand for him. There's another exhibit. He says, what hours did you list? He says 10 to 1800. AUSA says, where was the meeting point? A big high-rise building. I called the number and someone came. He said it was Combs' bodyguard. How did he look? An older African-American gentleman, heavy set, between 6'3", 6'5". So what did he say? Well, he kind of came up with Mr. Combs, and he said I was a good guy and I was doing a good thing. So upstairs, said Mr. Combs was smiling. He called me Eddie, my angel. My voice was cracking, so he said I was coming down with something. So I guess Diddy thought he was sick. Garcia says Mr. Combs told Christina, go get me some of the tea he had liked. Then he asked, do you have it? I said yes and handed it to him. What did he do? He left and came back. He asked if it was the only copy. What did you say? He said, I believe so. Garcia says, Mr. Combs said it had to be the only copy, nothing in the cloud. I said, Mr. Medrano, and he said it was the only copy. He took it off the server. AUSA says, what did you say? That if Cassie filed a complaint, I could get in trouble. Garcia says, Mr. Combs said, don't worry. Cassie wanted to go on too. He called her on FaceTime and showed me. She was in a gray hoodie, but I recognized her. AUSA says, what did Ms. Ventura say? That she had a movie coming out and wanted this not to come out. Garcia says he wanted my ID and that of Mr. Medrano and the responding officer, Mr. Flores. But he's a very straight guy and probably wouldn't do it. I told Bill Medrano. What did Medrano say? Garcia said we'd get Henry Elias, the other responding officer. So look like, I don't know if you get what I'm saying, Chad. Looked like Diddy wanted some assurance that these guys actually deleted it. So he's like, yo, let me get your name. I need your number. And I want your boss's name who went in there and deleted it. I want his name and his number. He said, but what about this other person who responded first, which is the Flores guy? I don't know if Diddy knew his name back then. How are we going to make sure he doesn't say anything? And they realize that, yo, this guy's not like how these cops are. They're by the book. So they basically go with this idea that, that it's another officer, and it's not the officer that we do know, okay? And that officer, by the way, is, what's his name? It's not Flores, okay? And when I say officer, this is security guards. Garcia says, when Mr. Combs saw the IDs, he looks at Henry's, which is the guy they swapped out for Flores, and he said, yeah, that's him. Then he brought out the NDAs that I wouldn't speak about it. So basically, they showed another person to Diddy, and Diddy was so drunk, he didn't realize. He was just like, yeah, that's the guy. So he identified the wrong guy who was security, who was actually Flores, and he said, bring out the NDAs because he's going to pay $50,000. He said they couldn't speak on it. AUSA says GXC 106. Do you recognize this? Garcia says, I stated I have provided the only copy of the video. AUSA says, did you read it? Garcia says, no, I was nervous. Were you given a copy? He says, no. AUSA says, and the NDA, what were liquidated damages? He says $1 million. AUSA says, what were you making then? He says $10.50 an hour. AUSA says, then what? Garcia says Mr. Combs put cash on the money counter. There were stacks of 10,000 at a time. The machine displayed 100,000. He said, why the additional 50,000? He says, for me, and for what he thought was for Flores. Okay? So I guess he busts this down with his boss. He says, how did Mr. Combs give you the 100,000? He says, in a brown paper bag. So was the bodyguard there? He says, yes. And Miss Karam, was she present? Garcia says, I would say at some point, because I stood up. He said, signifying that I'd be leaving. Garcia said, Mr. Combs escorted me to my car. He asked me how I'd be spending it. He said, don't make any big purchases. Mr. Steele, the judge says, Mr. Steele, if you're objecting, speaking to the microphone, that's sustained. Disregard the last part of that. So it looked like Brown and Steele objected. So what did you do? I called Bill Medrano. I gave him $50,000. How much did you give to Mr. Elias? And now Mr. Elias is the guy who is not the guy who was involved, but they use his name. He got 20. And so what'd you do with your 30,000? He said, I bought a used car with the cash. AUSA says, did you hear from Mr. Combs again? He says, yes. He called and told me happy Easter if I ever need anything. Did you ever reach out to him later? Garcia says a few years via Instagram asking if there was work in L.A. I never heard back. Now we get a sidebar. We're back from the sidebar, and it says, anything further, Mr. Steiner, or Mrs. Steiner? Steiner says, yes. Mr. Flores, did you see the video again? Why they say Mr. Flores? This is Garcia. Says, yes, on a news outlet. Also, Mr. Flores messaged me a screenshot. He said, did you keep those messages? No, I want nothing to do with it. AUSA says, were you ever contacted by law enforcement? He says, yes. Did you tell the truth? No, I wanted nothing to do with it. Did you get your own lawyer, then told the truth? Yes. AUSA says no further questions. So the prosecutor basically lets out the secret that this guy in question lied to the prosecutors at first about what happened, and then when he realized how serious it was, he began to come clean. Wow. The court proceedings, so let's just kind of get back into it. Okay, so the thread continues to be restarted here. Okay, damn, good. All right, so now the jury came back out, chat, and all rise, blah, blah. The AUSA says I'm going to enter a stipulation into evidence that during the search at the Miami airport, the law enforcement seized 2 cell phones from Christina Karam's person. Now, this is big and important, chat. It feels like the government is starting to make their case a little bit more colorful around Christina Karam. Now, that's going to put them on the hook to say, if you don't have her come in this courtroom and testify to say she did all the things you claim she did for Diddy, you look crazy. And if she does do that, now we know that she basically flipped on Diddy, okay? I guess. She's been absent so far, and even Diddy's team has talked to her, team, so we think she's not cooperating. All right. So after the stipulation, it says, publish it for the jury. It says 24 contacts, including Eddie My Angel, okay? And the phone number and Eddie My Angel friend Intercontinental. It says there was a photo of the IDs on the device. AUSA says we are also entering into evidence records from signature banks. Is there any objections? Defense says no. With that, the government can call Derek Ferguson. So now we have somebody else. He says, how did you know Mr. Combs? He said, well, I worked for him in between 1998 and 2017. Then it continues. It says, what was your role? I was a CFO. How are your bonuses determined? It's like if they resulted in my performance. AUSA says, were you responsible for your managing Mr. Combs' personal finances? Ferguson says, yes, at times during my tenure. AUSA says, how was your supervisor? Ferguson says, sometimes to Mr. Combs himself or, I guess helping out, right? AUSA says, how did you interact with Mr. Combs? Ferguson says, a couple times a week. Later, he became a congressman or a chairman. AUSA says, how did you communicate with him? She admits by phone. Okay, text messages, obviously. AUSA says, so who is this? And now they're showing pictures. Could be of animals, could be of anything. Okay. So they show a couple people. Ferguson says Paul. He said these individuals, Roger Bonds, D-Rock. So we're getting like Diddy's team is still staying intact. Ferguson says Roger Bond and D-Rock. Then they were both. Well, anyway. So they asked Diddy Ferguson what was Diddy's creative role or his role. They're like, yo, he was involved of creative and marketing. AUSA says did some ventures have partners? Ferguson says, well, Bad Boys record was with Arista Records. And also we worked with Warner, Sean John, and Sean John had the clothing line at that time. AUSA says, what were the profits? Ferguson says, very profitable. AUSA says, how was Mr. Combs paid? He says, sometimes by salary, sometimes by distribution hub from the companies he worked for. They said, what's distribution? Well, if it's solely owned and operated and passed through in a song or, through. Yeah, we keep seeing Roger Bonds, KK, and D-Rock being mentioned, but none of those people have appeared. Yeah, I feel like the big three right now is Roger Bonds, KK, and D-Rock. And of course, James Cruz. We've heard these people's names. Haven't seen anything about them yet. By the way, shout out to Drill. I think Drill cut the stream. I didn't know Drill knew how to cut my stream. Yo, Drill, good job, buddy. My nigga Drill cut the whole stream. I like it. I fuck with it. That was actually good to prevent no other bullshit, but appreciate you, Drill. He ain't even only cut it on YouTube. That nigga cut it, or at least the way how he knows to cut it, he could cut it all over, so I appreciate him. Anyway, we're still in the mode of trying to not figure out, but we're in the afternoon mode for this trial. Kind of uneventful since Mia got off the stand. So Mia's done. That's Sarah Snecker. They bring on this guy. He's the guy who took the money, $100,000. Diddy paid. Don't put this shit out, right? That's the payoff money that includes, whatever you saw me do to Cassie in the Intercontinental Hotel, make it disappear, except Diddy does a really odd request that I'm even confused by. If I'm into paying for something to go away, I don't also pay to retain a copy of that footage. Unless maybe that footage could help you at some point. I would just say, burn the entire tape. Prove to me that nobody can see nothing that happened in the last 2 weeks, and I'll give you $100,000. Instead, he allows them to give them his word that they deleted it, and they gave him a flash drive with the incident that they deleted on it. Okay, whatever. The person who we first heard, which is Flores, who responded, he was too square. He eventually became NYPD. He couldn't take bribes, or he wouldn't. So he's out of the picture. Diddy goes downstairs, sees another guy. His name is Garcia. He says, I'll talk to you. But at first, he's reluctant to be able to tell Diddy, I could delete the footage. Diddy basically starts calling him my angel. Eddie, my angel. We keep seeing his name. Eddie, my angel. Eventually, that dude talks to his boss. His boss got a name with a B. And then, essentially, what happens is that the boss says, well, I could delete the shit, but I need $50,000. Diddy does one better and says, I'll give $100,000. But I need a few things. I need your IDs. And that first dude that showed up, which would be Flores, I need his ID too. Remember, that Flores dude he's kind of square, so he's not trying to bend the rules, even if Diddy's offering money, but these two dudes trying to get the money. So they said, We got you. And they provide somebody else. Somebody else named, I forgot what the actual name was. It'll jog my memory in a second. So 3 people bust down $100,000. The boss gets $50,000. He goes into the room. He does all that shit. Comes out of the room with the flash drive. The lower level worker who set the play up, he was going to get the other $50,000, but he remembers he got to pay out the person who is going to act like they are Flores, because when they had to send 3 IDs. And when they sent the fake ID, not fake ID, but the wrong person to Diddy, Diddy was so either fucked up when that shit happened. Diddy was just like, the third, yeah, that's definitely him. It wasn't him. So they gave the guy who pretended like he was the one who showed up instead of Flores, they gave him 20 grand. And the obvious remaining amount was 30 grand. Okay? All good. Hold on. Where's my chat at? Why can't I see my chat? Hold on. It won't show on the screen. Oh, we're back. Okay. All good. Yeah. So it's pretty much an afternoon session. I could get through this in like 10, 15 minutes. They restarted the thread for Inner City Press, and I'll talk to you in a second. But let me just get through this. So Submaranium, basically, they bring the jury back out. They're going to enter some stipulation that during there was a search at Miami Airport. Remember when Diddy was about to get on that plane? They seized a lot of things from Diddy at that point. That's why that was like the first notice he really had that you're under federal investigation. Apparently, he was with Christina Karam, his chief of staff assistant. They took 2 cell phones from her. Okay? By the way, we've seen them publish cell phone data from Christina Karam. That's why at first I thought she's working with the feds, but then I don't know no more because Diddy's team supposedly talked to her team. You can't play both sides, you know? All right. So AUSA says, just publish that for the jury. It says 24 contacts, including Eddie My Angel and his number. And it's at the Intercontinental. It says there was a photo of the IDs on the device. The AUSA says we're going to enter into evidence records from Signature Bank. The judge says any objections? Defense says no. AUSA says with that, the government wants to call Derek Ferguson. So they're now done with this Garcia guy. They've proved what they needed to prove. He took the money, and he clearly says, he said to Diddy at some point, yo, I can't show you the video, but this shit is bad. Okay? He took $100,000. He kept 30, gave somebody 20, gave another guy 50. Cool. They get him off the stand. There's not much to really talk to him about. The next person is called Derek Ferguson. He pops up on the stand and says, yo, how do you even know Mr. Combs? They said, well, I worked for him from 1998 to 2017. What was your role? And now he's a CFO. We could Google him. Derek Ferguson, Diddy. So now this is CFO that's actually testifying. I'll tell you why this is important. Give me one second. Let me grab water right here. Okay. This shit's important primarily for 2 reasons. So if a CFO is testifying, you guys probably know what that means. A CFO is a chief financial officer. It's clear that according to the feds, Diddy was using Bad Boys Entertainment or Combs Enterprise as that was like the cover front for what they're claiming is a RICO enterprise, which is an enterprise to get freak-offs, do debauchery, and also intimidate people. They're claiming Bad Boys Records was pretty much almost a shell company for the protection of what Diddy was doing under the cover. Now, also, I do want to add, this is kind of surprising to me a little bit, and I'll tell you why it's surprising. Because of all the people we've heard that use their business as a cover for the bullshit they do, I'm very surprised that Diddy's the first one to get caught up. Think about Suge Knight. With all due respect, not to throw his name in the hat, but I guess I am by mentioning his name. Think about Jay-Z. There's a lot of people historically in hip-hop who are like, damn, how they had all that power? How they have all that intimidation? And people would be like, well, it's because they had so much business going on, they was making so much money. I'm surprised Diddy's the first thing to get caught up on that type of shit, okay? Okay. So, they're now going to ask the CFO a couple questions. They said, how was bonuses determined? Ferguson says, well, really it was company results and my performance. AUSA says, were you responsible for managing Mr. Combs' personal finances? Ferguson says, yes, at times during my tenure. AUSA says, who was your supervisor? Ferguson says, sometimes to Mr. Combs himself. What does that mean? Maybe he was saying Mr. Combs, right? AUSA says, how often did you interact with Combs? Ferguson says a couple times a week. Later, he became more of a chairman. And AUSA says, how did you communicate with him? He says, back then, it was pagers. They says, who is this? And now they say, this is Uncle Paulie. Ferguson says, Paul. It says, and these individuals, that's Roger Bonds, D-Rock. They were security. So, chat, let me go back on my list of people who could sink Diddy. Uncle Paulie, D-Rock, okay, Roger Bonds, to a lesser extent, 100% Christina Karam, and we've heard about James Cruz. So there's 5 people that we feel if they've switched on Diddy, they have taken a plea because at this point, the people who we would think is his co-conspirators would be these people. Christina Karam, all the security guards, Uncle Paulie, Roger Bonds, D-Rock, and then, of course, did I say Christina Karam already? If not her, who else? There's one more name. Anyway, fuck it. All right, so cool. AUSA says, what was Mr. Combs the sole owner of? He says, yes, he was the sole owner of Bad Boys Production and Films. AUSA says, what was his role? I don't know if they're talking about Diddy. He says, well, it was creative and marketing. AUSA says, did some of the ventures have partners? Ferguson says, yes. Bad Boy Records was with Arista Records and with Warner Records. Sean John Clothing had a partner. They said, what were the profits? He said, well, I'm not going to lie. Most of the stuff was very profitable. AUSA says, how was Mr. Combs paid? Ferguson says, sometimes salary, sometimes distributions from the companies. And they said, what's the distribution? Well, if it was solely owned or passed through like an S corp, the owner determines the drawdown. AUSA says, did each have a bank account? Ferguson says, yes. Could you sign into the accounts? Ferguson says, yes. AUSA says, what banks did Combs Enterprise use or his companies? They said, well, we use Citibank, HSBC, and Signature Bank. They said, what is this one? They said, that's Janice Combs Music, Inc. It furnished his name and likeness. Now, remember, Janice Combs, that's his mom's name. So it looked like he created a shell company under his mom's name that was responsible for his name and likeness. Interesting enough. Okay. AUSA says, Mr. Ferguson, what are these initials in Section 4? Ferguson says, yeah, the initials were for 92909. It says, is this a business checking account? It says, yes. Now, remember, they're going through financials with this chief financial officer. AUSA says, in this one, he says, yeah, that's with Diageo and with Ciroc. AUSA says, and how was this account funded? So, well, it was funded through inflows. AUSA says, what about the credit cards? Well, primarily it was American Express, and we used to use expense reimbursements. AUSA says, did Mr. Combs ever have an Amex? It says, yes. Did he use it for personal as well as professional? They said, yes. And the companies paid? Ferguson says, yes. Now, that's going to be important, chat. I'm going to tell you why it's important, okay? It's important because they're trying to show that Diddy used his bank accounts for his companies in a way that wasn't only for business. It was intermingling his personal finances and his personal, whatever he had to do with his business, whatever he had to do. Which meant that if you could prove that he's using that Amex that used to be, according to the chief financial officer, is for an account to say we paid for this, and it could be used to reimburse people that did legitimate business or paid for things on Diddy's behalf. When Diddy was using it for personal shit, again, it's Diddy's company. He could do that, technically, as long as he's claiming it right on his taxes and he's not saying my personal shit is my business shit. The problem here becomes if Diddy is using his company cards to cover up crimes for his personal life. That's why they're trying to get to, okay? How was the outgoing cash handled? Ferguson said we had a petty cash account with cash advances. For example, those traveling who didn't have American Express cards, they would get cash, right? AUSA says when Mr. Combs was paid in cash, how did it work? He said we'd match it to a contract. That's it, right? We would match it to a contract. Okay. All right. And then AUSA says, were you aware of Mr. Combs' security staff carrying cash for him? Ferguson says, I was not aware of that shit. AUSA says, and when you were responsible for his personal finances, what did you do? I said, well, we were just budget for a year. AUSA said, what about properties? It was inflows and outflows. What properties did he own? He said, he owned something in the Hamptons, New York, Miami. They were held in LLCs for anonymity and liability reduction and tax benefits purposes. AUSA says, did you ever oversee other personal accounts of Mr. Combs? Ferguson says, I did. AUSA says, were you aware of him supporting other people? Ferguson says, yes, from his personal earnings. So basically, if he was giving money out to people he fuck with. AUSA says, Your Honor, this might be a good place for us to take a break. Judge says, how much time with this witness? AUSA says, 20 minutes. We think. And Jane will be starting late tomorrow. We expect 2 days for her cross-examination. Now, this is very important, Chad. We thought we found Jane Doe. This ain't Jane Doe. Remember, Mia, that's not Jane Doe. So it's now going into 3 people, at least, that's going to accuse Diddy of sexual assault. Because Jane Doe is going to accuse him of sexual assault. Mia accused him of sexual assault. And Cassie accused him of sexual assault. Okay? So they said, how much more of the witness? 20 more minutes, we think. And later, okay, cool. And said, all right, bet. Judge says, only Mr. Ferguson today? AUSA says, yes. And if Mr. Agnifalo's cross goes long, can we stay late? The judge says yes. So the judge is agreeing that let's get this person off the witness stand, and this other person, Jane Doe, we're going to do 2 days on, okay? So, interesting. They're back. Now, before the jury comes back, there's another lawyer for Diddy named Jason Driscoll. They now speak. They said, the exhibit is full of hearsay. The judge says, I have the gist. Ms. Foster, are you saying that none of this is for the truth? And Foster says, yes, this is not a hearsay, excludable hearsay. The judge says, the objection is overruled. How are we doing on the compilation video? The defense says we still object. The judge says, but the compilation is put together. AUSA says, we would like some material to be taken down or other relief. The judge says, bring the witness back. Okay. Again, once again, procedural things about they're trying to introduce this. They don't want that to be introduced. Regular shit, right? AUSA says, Mr. Ferguson, before the break, so remember, Ferguson's still on the stand. Again, if you don't know who Ferguson is, that is the chief financial officer of Diddy's companies. By the way, we could assume he probably had no idea the fuck shit was going on. He's just paying out whatever Diddy tells him to pay out. He's trying to manage the books, all that shit. So, Mr. Ferguson, before the breaks, we discussed these bank account records. He says, what is 207 Anderson LLC? Ferguson says that's Mr. Combs' property in Alpine, New Jersey. 207. Yo, I'm so nosy, bro. Why am I so nosy? Okay, so this is the house Diddy owned in Alpine. Why am I so nosy, Chad? I'm too nosy, huh? Holy shit. Let's get the tour. Holy shit. Damn. This is Alpine, New Jersey. How much was it sold for? Let's go to Zillow. Ooh, they're asking price. It's being sold now again, supposedly. $8 million. All right. Pool in the back. How many bedrooms is this? 1. Hold on. I'll count the bedrooms. 1. This looks like a master. 2. This is a foyer right here. 1, 2, blah, 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 blah. It would be 3 over here, 4 over here, 5 over here. 6 is going to be on the ground floor. 7 is going to be on this ground floor too. 3-car garage. Yo, what the fuck? Stop moving. 3-car garage. Got a tennis court here on the left, or basketball court. Separated garage. Pool back here. Nice little drive up. This is Alpine, New Jersey. Really expensive. Yes, this is a $8 million house in Alpine, New Jersey. I ain't gonna cap with you. It is. Okay. Pocket watch ain't undefeated, chat. Trust me. Trust me. And so what was the mailing address? And they give another address, okay? They said, what are these internal transfers? It says, well, $190,000 and then $575,000 and then $100,000 in December 2011. AUSA says, who decides whether to initiate an internal transfer? Ferguson says, usually the comptroller. AUSA says, do you remember these? Ferguson says, no. AUSA says, and this outright transfer right here, who did it go to? Ferguson says, Cassie. AUSA says, for how much? Ferguson says, $20,000. And this one coming in, Ferguson says, Roderick Ventura for $20,000. Now, chat, y'all know what this y'all know what that is, right? Remember when Diddy charged or taxed Cassie's parents for Cassie cheating on him? Like, yeah, y'all owe me 20 bands. And they sent the 20 bands to Diddy. But Diddy later sent the 20 bands back. It gotta be the transfer. So it came from Roderick Ventura, that's somebody in Cassie Ventura's family. So Diddy gets the 20 and he sends it back to Cassie later on after, he makes sure, he blew up Kid Cudi car and all that type of shit. When did you leave the CFO position? Ferguson says at the end of 2012, the chief growth officer, the Revolt Media and TV. Okay, so he was the chief growth officer, then Revolt Media and TV. So after you left, how often did you communicate with Combs? He says, he texted me back in 2024. I don't remember the day. AUSA says, you don't remember the day? I'll show you. Ferguson says, oh, okay, I see. Now, we don't know what that message is, but it looked like it was profound. It looked like Diddy was hitting up all his former employees to try to, this is before he gets indicted. He's trying to hit them up to be like, bitch, make sure y'all don't tell nobody I was doing nothing crazy. And so they show the text message. The guy says, I see. AUSA says nothing further. Ignifilo pops back up. He says, bro, you grew up in the Bronx, didn't you? Where'd you go to high school? He said, Stuyvesant. Ignifilo says, where did you go to business school? He said, well, I went to Harvard. I got my MBA in 1990. Ignifilo says, then you were at the BMG Music Group, right? Ferguson says, yes. They own over 100 music labels worldwide. They own Arista, 50% of Bad Boy, at least at a certain period of time. Ignifilo says, so Mr. Combs do whatever he wanted at that time? Ferguson says, nah, he couldn't. There were Arista agreements. Ferguson then says, coming from the Bronx, I thought he needed more companies. That's why he would hire people from the community. I saw that in Mr. Combs. I thought it was a chance to have an impact. Ignifilo says, what was the onboarding process like? Ferguson says, we would interview someone, whoever we met at Arista. Ferguson says, I met Benny Medina, some other people. Ignifilo says, so you didn't just meet Combs and get the job, right? He says, no. Ignifilo says, how did Bad Boy change from 1999 to 2012? Ferguson says, well, it added a few other businesses. The records were getting competitive, okay? Talking about music, that is. Ignifilo says, do you remember Notorious LLC? Ferguson says, yeah, it was a magazine called Notorious. Ignifilo says Bad Boy Records was established in 1993, right? Ferguson says, nah, I think it was 1996. Ignifilo says, did Bad Boy have any connections to Interscope? And Ferguson says, yes. They had connection to that, UMG, and Rhino. Ignifilo says, who was Andre Harrell? Ferguson says, he founded Uptown Records, went to Motown, then back to Bad Boy. Ignifilo says, what was the spirits business called? That means liquor. He says, eventually it was called Combs Wines and Spirits. I was involved in the start with Diageo. So that's where De Leon and his ownership or whatever that had to do with Ciroc fell under. Ignifilo says, what issues arose with Diageo? Ayo says, objection. Ignifilo says, were there differences about how to market? So now they're talking about this Diageo deal that we all know that Diddy supposedly was paid out $1 billion. And we all know some people actually have a conspiracy theory to say the only reason why he's locked up is because him and Diageo fell out. Let's keep it going. Ferguson says there was always differences of opinion. We had conversation on how we would drive it more. Was the brand everywhere like the competitors? AUSA said, let's do a sidebar. Sidebar, okay? They come back. Ignifilo says, were you concerned that Diageo was marketing Ciroc primarily in, and he's being careful, certain places to certain people? You know what he's trying to say that, chat. Were you concerned Diageo was only trying to sell Ciroc to niggas, okay? Ferguson says, well, you asking my opinion? Ignifilo says, just your personal knowledge. Ferguson says the distribution was highly concentrated. The question was why? Ferguson says Diageo was marketing it more in urban areas than more broadly, right? No, never mind. This is Ferguson. He says Diageo was marketing more in urban areas than broadly. Ignifilo says, but what about Revolt? Wasn't it owned by Highbridge Capital Management, which was purchased by J.P. Morgan Chase? Ferguson says, I think so. Now, that's important, chat. This whole time we thought Diddy owned Revolt outright. Apparently, his ownership was tied in with a management group and I guess subsequently purchased by J.P. Morgan. The more you know. Ferguson says, I think so. Ignifilo says, Highbridge had 2 seats. And I guess they're talking about a board or something. Ferguson says, yes. 2 of the 5 seats on Revolt. Ignifilo says, what were you on Revolt? Ferguson says, the chief operating officer. That's the CEO. He says, what did that entail? Ferguson says, finance, production. Ignifilo says, and Sean Combs wasn't in the management, right? Ferguson says he was not. Ignifilo says, let's look at DX 1901 about Combs Enterprises. Let's put up the redacted version. They show a chart. Say, here you have James Cruz. Remember that name. I keep telling you. James Cruz. And the HR officer after Vashta Wilson, Andre Harrell, and yourself. Ferguson says, yeah, that's the team. That's the team. Ignifilo says, who's digital? Or what's digital? Ferguson says, so that's what Ignifilo says, right? What's digital? Ferguson says, Ignifilo says, it's okay. Your pause says enough. Personal versus business expense. What was your accounting background? Ferguson says, I was a CPA for a time. Okay. Ignifilo says, so you never saw Mr. Combs sitting reviewing his Amex bill? Ferguson says, no. Ignifilo says, when there was a partnership with another company, wouldn't they look at the books too? Ferguson says, yes. Ignifilo says, so wait, many high-profile people have assistants, right? Ferguson says, yeah, they do. Ignifilo says, wasn't security part of the business? Ferguson says, yes. Ignifilo says, security's job was to be in close proximity with Mr. Combs so no one would do something dangerous to him, right? Ferguson says, right. Okay, let's talk about the cash. What was the cash receipt from and when is it used? Ferguson says, for example, touring. Ignifilo calls for a sidebar. The judge says yes. They return. They then say, did you ever see anyone help Sean Combs commit crimes? Remember, this guy is being put on the stand to help prove the RICO aspect, that Diddy's reach and the way he utilizes his legit corporations were under the banner or the facetious manner of help me cover up my crimes or help me commit crimes. So that's why his lawyer is trying to ask questions to legitimize why these business people would do business shit. Okay? So did you see anyone help Sean Combs commit crimes? Ferguson said, nah, I didn't. Did you see anyone make the company stronger through coercion? Through force? Said, could you explain that one? What do you mean by coercion? Agnifilo says, that's fair enough. So I ask it again. He said, you ever seen like some sex abuse or sex trafficking? Ferguson says, no, I didn't. Agnifilo says, you were there 19 years. How hard was it? Ferguson says, I guess it was hard. We built from scratch. It was long hours. Agnifilo says, did you send a text message to Combs in November 2017? Ferguson says, I don't really remember. Agnifilo says, don't worry. I'll show you. Okay? Did you tell Mr. Combs you learned so much from him? Ferguson, with his memory jog, says, yes. He pushed the entire team. He had passion. Agnifilo says, you're a religious man, aren't you? AUSA says, objection. That was sustained. AUSA says, you're on the board of his charter school? Ferguson says, yes. Agnifilo says, the school tries to work with at-risk children, right? AUSA says, objection, 403. That's Rule 403, some evidentiary rules, right? Judge sustains it. So let's move on. Agnifilo says, do you think highly of Mr. Combs? Ferguson says, I don't know how to respond to that really. AUSA says, sidebar. Agnifilo says nothing further. Okay, so they look like they're trying to rest. Judge says, redirect. Was Revolt Films entirely separated from Revolt TV? Now, the reason why they're bringing up Revolt Films here, chat, is that remember Mia, who claims she was sexually assaulted, she plays into this RICO conspiracy to say, yo, I only stuck around because of these career opportunities. Without these career opportunities, I felt my career would be done. Diddy would gas me up like, yo, I'm going to have a TV show done in your name, and then he would take it away from me. So that was supposedly with Revolt Films, and that's why they're asking about Revolt Films to kind of debunk this idea that Diddy was using these companies to coerce people and to take advantage of them. Maybe he was just running a business, and maybe sometimes the decision didn't align with whatever other people wanted, right? So now we're talking about Revolt Films. Who was the head of Revolt Films? Ferguson says, I don't know. AUSA says, did you ever stay in a hotel room with Mr. Combs? Ferguson says, no. They then ask, on this org chart, who's the chairman? They said Sean Combs. So do you see Christina Karam here? Ferguson says, yes. AUSA says, do you see the name Mia? Ferguson says, yes, that was the development and acquisitions. AUSA says nothing further. They ask for a recross, okay? The recross, Agnifilo says, So let's get this clear. You never went to his home or his hotel because that's his personal life, right? AUSA says objection. The judge says sustain. Agnifilo says nothing further. Again, all Agnifilo is trying to say is that they're trying to piggyback off what the state said. Yeah, you already made our case. Diddy kept his business and his personal life separate. Now, there is some business and personal life that intermingle, but that intermingling is because Diddy had sole ownership and he could do what he want financially. Again, maybe not ethically as a business, but it's Diddy's company and it's really all his money. Okay? The judge then tell the jurors they could go. It says, all rise, you may all go. And AUSA says, with Jane tomorrow, we want to avoid the type of accident that happened with Mia. So we want the public screens off. We want to avoid a situation where we accidentally put up a non-redacted version. And the judge says, okay, for Jane's testimony. AUSA also says, the new compilation, I understand there is a defense objection. Judge says, I don't need further argument on that. AUSA says, I intend to show Jane some explicit videos, free call videos. I propose we turn off the attorney screen so the gallery can't see. Agnifilo says, Mr. Combs is prevented from possessing any of the text messages of Jane. Here's the ask. We need to meet with our client in a place with a desk with no separation to go through the text messages. The judge says, could you do it if you leave now? Combs says, what if we use the courtroom tonight? Judge says there will be marshals here. Agnifilo says, fine with us. He needs to see the text. He can only see them if he's with us. So, by the way, and this is really important too. And I don't know if you guys know this. In some sensitive cases, and it's not only sex cases, the judge could bar the defendant, as long as they have counsel, from being able to access all the discovery in a non-supervised manner. Obviously, this is a sex charge or in a sex case. So if they turned over all the freak-offs to Diddy might be whacking off to these things in the cell. Like, I'm not saying he would do that, but that's the thinking. It's like, why would you give the abuser more evidence of, not necessarily more evidence of the abuse, but more things that could make this worse? So you want to have, obviously they're entitled to see it, but what they'll do is they'll say you can see it with your attorney present. So your attorney could show it to you, but only in the presence of your attorney. By the way, I think, and this is forgot to ask him about this. I was going to whack 100 actually. In the Big U case, Big U is representing himself currently. I don't think he's going to represent himself for the whole case, but I do think that there is going to be some privileged things in the discovery that for whatever reason, he wants to deal with himself. He wants to see it himself. Otherwise, there's going to be protective orders like they usually do in federal court that's going to prevent certain things to be shown to the defendant outside of the watchful eye or the supervision or the quote-unquote meeting with their lawyer, and that's one way to avoid it. If you're your lawyer and you're the defendant, you get entitled to see everything. Okay, anyway. So, all right. You can only sit when he's with us. We need more time without a screen between us. It's a Sixth Amendment issue. Let's see. What is the Sixth Amendment? The Sixth Amendment is the right of the accused. Okay. It guarantees a speedy and public trial and impartial jury, the right to know the charges against them, the right to confront witnesses. That's very important. And the right to counsel. Okay. So the Sixth Amendment has to do with really trials. Okay. All right. These text messages were produced in Rule 16 discovery. They've had them for months. We expect the direct of Jane to run to Monday. So they'll have the weekend. The judge says, are the texts sensitive? AUSA says there's nudity. A paralegal could sit with Mr. Combs, okay? So the AUSA is saying this is some other freak-off material. And that they're saying that they're going to be, I know we said Mia was really witness number 2. We've listed the order of witnesses who are important. Cassie, number 1. We said Mia was number 2, then Capricorn Clark. It's clear that Jane Doe is going to be number 2. Very clear, okay? And they expect that the direct is going to go for 2 days, which means the redirect, or not redirect, the cross probably is going to go for 2 or 3 days. And this is why Agnifilo is trying to fight for, we need time to prep, we need time to prep, we need time to prep. Now, the AUSA is saying they won't even cross our witness until Monday. Why they need to see everything? Obviously, Agnifilo is going to be like, yo, we need to be prepared because we might have to object to certain shit. And yeah. Agnifilo says, we just need a solution. The judge says, why does the screen prevent you? Paint a picture for me. So they're saying they want to sit with Diddy without a screen in between them and Diddy. Because they want to sit and Diddy could go through the fucking thing on the phone, and or not the phone, but the tablet, to go through the evidence and be like, yo, this is what was going on then, blah, blah, blah. Yo, you should probably ask this question, or let's wait to see if she's going to say this type of narrative because we could catch her in a lie here. They want a plan. So the judge is saying, why does it matter if there's a screen in between you and Diddy? Agnifilo says the screen is a thick mesh. You want to see with your client and use a highlighter. The judge says there's time in the courthouse, okay? 7 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. and after. So it looks like the judge he's not going, right? The judge says for the SCIF, we need a special officer, I'm told. Ignifilo says the courtroom will be better. We don't mind the marshals. Judge says there are marshal service issues. Defense says we still oppose the compilation video. The judge says it would be better if we had the original. And why don't we? The defense says it would have been deleted after 10 days anyway. The judge goes to the side with marshals and then says, for today, you can use the courtroom until 6 p.m. I'll try to figure it out for the rest of this week. Ignifilo says, we need more time. Judge says, everyone else, get out the courtroom, as will the court. It says out. So it looks like they have dismissed the court. All right. Interesting. All right. Now, we're getting to another important part in this. Oh, shit. Look at Unc. Unc back again. Unc is doing his thing. Yo, Unc bagging bitches and shit now?
What's your name, baby? Priscilla, thank you for following. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you. Where you from?
Nah, Unc going crazy right now.
When he described why he wanted...
Hold on. Let me just see. You know, Unc's style's a little bit longer, drawn out, but he gives us more, if you ask me. Let me just look at Lauren Conlon real quick and kind of figure out if she got something to say. I could finish in like 8 minutes because she does her thing in like 8 minutes. Logic is not around this week. We're asked out today, this week with Logic, huh? Yeah. He busy. Hopefully nothing crazy going wrong. And then who else? Law and Crimes. Law and Crimes. Here we go. Okay.
This is from Hampton Boyce.
Oh. Oh, there's a victim that's MIA.
Hi, Jesse. Why the prosecution didn't ask Cassie about the hotel tape, which she did call the security to turn over the tape to KK or Diddy, she wanted it trash out. I mean, there was testimony, earlier today where apparently Cassie was on the phone and basically said she wanted the tape too. And so I think this goes to the idea that it wasn't Combs, trying to cover up evidence of his crimes, but maybe it was trying to protect him and Cassie together, right? So I guess that I don't recall what the level she was asked about this on the stand, but again...
Okay, I'm trying to get to the witness 3 thing.
Combs may have thought...
Sure. Well, Jesse, that's a very good question that everybody's asking. Where is she? Where is...
Okay, so this is about witness 3. Let's get into it.
Kind of objected to that. But Enlin DK says, why not bring Gina, or at least her testimony in,
so Gina was going to be witness 3? No way.
Make her plead the 5th and give immunity too. Wouldn't it prove she's scared or paid? If she doesn't, get the victim part, and then it kind of gets cut off. But I guess there's a lot of different points to that. I'll allow you to jump into how you want to discuss Gina or alleged victim number 3.
Sure. Well, Jesse, that's a very good question that everybody's asking. Where is she? Where is her attorney that's also been on the table that nobody has been able to contact her? What I thought was very interesting was that the defense said, hey, listen, she's definitely not coming. It brought up the question, how do you know? I mean, I don't know what's going on. Nobody knows what's going on in terms of why she's not presenting herself.
I keep telling y'all, there's a few people still hanging on the bandwagon. Gina's one of them. I think KK's another one of them. The rest of them are flipped. And the rest of them have looked at what Cassie done got, the $20 million, and said, I think I could get some bread too. Gina gonna ride it till the wheel fall off. Gina, one of them bitches that's, no, let me not use the word bitch, but she one of them women who are thinking, at least if Diddy come out of this, I ain't got no other bitches to fight and compete with. The field is clear. He's all mine. He's all mine now. Fuck these other hosts. Young Miami traded on him a long time ago. Cassie on here singing like a bird. This other chick who was his assistant is lying on his ass too. I'm the only one that's left loyal. You know one of them ones? That's that bottom bitch mentality. Like, I bet. Now, finally, I got rid of these other bitches. These ungrateful bitches. I got rid of them. That's what I think Gina's doing. Christina Karam is like, I bet. all these other assistants and other people who work for Diddy. You know how long I was telling that nigga I deserve $3 million a year. You know what I mean? I was his real ride or die. I would take his secrets to the grave. Okay? So those are the two. They're hanging on the bandwagon. They're hanging on to the bandwagon. I don't think none of them show up. They're all ghosts.
Because she does have options. She has options to come there and plead the fifth. She has options to come there and get immunity. She has so many options, but where is she? That is the question that nobody can answer 100%. We can only kind of project or kind of guess what she is. I don't know if some...
They don't describe... somebody keeps saying Jane Doe is 50 Cent's ex. I don't think so. Jane Doe, single mom that met him in 2020. Diddy, Jane Doe, single mother, 2020. Where did we get that information about the Jane Doe shit? Okay, so whoever who said that, you're going from civil suits. There's a bunch of people who are Jane Does as civil suits. We have no indication to give us a hint who the criminal case Jane Doe is. So maybe this one, right? Jane Doe, single mother, met him in 2020. Maybe this one is what's her name? 50 Cent baby mom. What's her name? Not Shanika. The other one. Daphne Joy. But Daphne Joy is also posting. I don't know. Hell no, I don't know. She posting like she good. Yo, why she look like... Yo, I hate these. Why she look like a wrestler right here? Okay, whatever. All right, whatever.
There was some other deal that was going on, but I thought it was very interesting that the defense was 100% sure that she is not coming.
Got another question from Shop Girl. Hi, Shop Girl. This is for you, Rich. Jesse, in trying to understand these charges, is the paying offs of security guards with Christina Korum and guards present racketeering?
No, not by itself. It's a predicate act. It's bribery. It is a predicate act that is part of, again.
Okay. All right, so who the fuck is Jane Doe?
The work for Puff, he couched it in language, because I'm from the Bronx, and Puffy was giving opportunities to people from my community. I guess that's good. Mark Agnifilo, he don't care. He coming right back to that same topic. The judge tells him, Mark, rephrase your question. Then Mark says something to the effect of, in your own professional opinion, what do you think the disagreement was between Diageo and Ciroc and Puffy? Derek Fisher says, Puffy was trying to get Diageo to drive Ciroc into more markets. Diageo only wanted to market in certain areas to certain people. This is what he said on the stand. This is where the tension starts. Mark Agnifilo, he ain't scared. He's a white man, but he ain't scared because he trying to help his client not go do 30 years or 20 years or 10 years. He says Derek, isn't it true that Diageo only marketed Combs' brands in the black areas? And I can't remember if there was an objection or whatever, but Mark Agnifilo said that. And Derek Ferguson, gave a very good answer. Because Mark Agnifilo said something to the effect of, in your opinion, Derek, do you think, and the government objected, right? Because they don't want you dealing with opinions. Mark Agnifilo rephrased the question, and he said, Derek, tell us in your own words what the tension was between Diageo and Puff. And Derek Ferguson said this: the facts were that the distribution was highly concentrated in urban areas. So Derek Fisher, he didn't even want to say like black areas, but maybe he's being inclusive as to black, Spanish, white, you know what I'm saying? But he said that's what the facts were. But Puffy wanted Ciroc marketed in the Hamptons, you know, at tennis matches. You know, he wanted to market it to white people too. He wanted more money. But Diageo was trying to keep him, you know, in highly concentrated urban areas.
By the way, I've thought about that. What do y'all think about the marketing of Ciroc? I think the campaign to market it was so synonymous with hip hop, it did make sense to market it in urban areas. It did. Like, if you're pushing this product through hip hop lifestyle and through hip hop marketing, you would want to promote in places where hip hop is consumed. Now, I do believe that you get to a saturation point where you should still want to grow the product and bring it to other spaces, maybe other music festivals, maybe country music, because definitely music and culture was always a part of the promotion for Ciroc. But I guess Diddy probably felt a different way, like, yo, all right, we're killing hip hop. Let's start marketing it as this is the beverage for, you know, refined people who are at country clubs and watching golf and tennis. And maybe that's where the frustration was, right?
They then moved on to Revolt Network. Puffy was awarded the cable television Revolt TV by Comcast. Comcast awarded 4 cable televisions, networks, and Puffy got one of them. The ownership of Revolt TV was Bad Boy Films and a private equity firm called Highbridge Capital Management. Highbridge Capital Management was somewhat affiliated with JP Morgan, and they had 2 seats on the board of directors out of 5, which means they had 40% of the voting power on the board. Derek testified that any major actions dealing with Revolt TV needed to be run by Highbridge Capital Management. Then they began to go through, Mark Agnifilo put up all the organizational charts of a couple of Puffy's companies. And what he was...
By the way, I gotta also be honest, chat. I think this crystallizes that, I've talked about and thought of an idea or a world where Diddy is found not guilty. I think even watching how this is playing out in federal court in his criminal case, it's very unlikely that he'll have any type of business power. Like, who would want to do business with Diddy's companies after this? Who would want to work there? It wouldn't have the same amount of luster or influence, even if he's found innocent. They're literally saying that they feel like his companies and his influence on his companies were used to abuse people. So, I've said if Diddy beats this case, he'll have some money left. He'll spend the rest of his time fighting some civil cases. A lot will get thrown out. Maybe 1 or 2 or 3 serious ones might go to the extent, or maybe he pays out for those. But you're going to have people constantly coming in, singing the same old song, trying to get some money off of him. His peers are always, even if they kind of be like, nah, we knew he wasn't guilty, they're not going to rush to try to put him back on that pedestal. He won't ever regain the type of cultural cachet that he did before. Remember, 2008, he launched Vote or Die, helped Barack Obama be elected. We don't see that ever happening again. We don't see any of the influence happening again. And that's what I'm saying. Again, I think for him, his life would just be drastically different. His businesses would be crippled. And by the way, remember Revolt. Revolt, it's not owned by him anymore. They actually pretty much bought him out. And they're operating without him. By the way, let me look. Does Revolt even cover this case? Revolt TV. Yeah, they act like this case don't exist. Let's go to news. Yeah. They cover everything but this case. Pusha T. Yeah, they cover everything but this case. I mean, I understand it too. I think they're giving him some grace. Yeah, if what was told to me back in the day about Revolt, they said out of all Diddy's businesses, Revolt is the only thing he's really gives a fuck about, because from what I was told, Diddy had personal finances back in certain endeavors by Revolt. It's like they're saying that a lot of people were saying it was a failure, but they said Diddy was so gun-ho on it succeeding, he would use his own money. They said not only would he use his own money, they said, let's say they were trying to do an episode and they needed, say, Drewski. And let's say Drewski needs $100,000. And let's say it's a show that don't got that budget and they only got $20,000. They said it was very frequent that Diddy would call Drewski. So Diddy would call Drewski on behalf of Revolt and say, what's up, Playboy? Yo, I just need you to, how you talk? What's up, son? I need you to do this favor for me. Like, I got you with this. Like, Diddy was wheeling and dealing, trying to get people to help out or to be a part of, or to, give a little discount here or there, or give appearances to Revolt, because that was his pet project. That's what I heard. Okay?
Illustrating was that, Puffy is not in the organizational chart of Bad Boy Records, Bad Boy Films, Revolt TV, the liquor business. These individual businesses had their own CEO, their own president, their own team, and that Puffy was really chairman of Combs Global or Combs Enterprises, and that each individual company was professionally ran by Harvard MBAs. There was another dude that went to Harvard with Derek Ferguson. Derek got him hired, and he was CFO. What's going on, baby? How you doing?
I'm listening to what he's saying.
Listening to me? Come here. Come over here. Say hi to my people. Come here. Come here. Check my girl out, y'all. She's sitting here listening to me. What's your name?
Listening to Snow.
Snow? Y'all, this is Snow. Where you from?
From Philadelphia.
From Philly? What nationality are you?
Vietnamese.
Shout out to Vietnam. Derek Ferguson was a certified public accountant. They went over in detail about business expenses versus personal expenses. Now, this was a key part. This was a key part in the RICO, in the RICO,
Your uncle sizing him up in case he had to knock that nigga the fuck out.
questioning the RICO. The joint venture between Arista and Bad Boy, Arista kept the books, the accounting. The joint venture between Bad Boy and Diageo, Diageo kept the books. The joint venture between Bad Boy and Interscope, Interscope kept the books. Whenever there's a joint venture, the people putting up the cheese keep the books. So it ain't like he can use these businesses to further a criminal enterprise when these are joint ventures with clear-cut operating agreements as to how these businesses are going to be run, how the profits are going to be shared, and who does what, and all of that. This is what Mark Agnifilo lays the groundwork, poking holes in the RICO joint. Mark Agnifilo says to Derek Ferguson, you worked for Puffy for 19 years. Number one, did you ever
Now, here's the thing about this Derek Ferguson guy. He looks like he's a neutral guy. It looks like actually the way he's testifying, he's saying, I don't know Diddy to be anything y'all say, so if y'all ask me if he's a monster, no. I can just tell you how he spent his money and how he operated with with company funds and how he controlled the company. I don't think this guy was had a POV that Diddy was a piece of shit, he beat me up. I don't think that was his POV at all.
see anyone help Puffy commit crimes? Derek Ferguson, no. Did you ever see anyone help Puffy commit violence? Derek said no. Did you ever see anyone help Puffy do coercion? Derek said, your definition of coercion may be different from my definition of coercion. Mark Agnifilo said, I'm going to withdraw that question. Next question, did you ever see anyone help Puffy commit force or acts of violence? No. Did you ever see anyone help Puffy enhance his reputation through violence? He said no. Did you ever see anyone help Puffy commit sexual abuse? He said no. Did you ever see anyone help Puffy commit sex trafficking? Prosecution. Objection. The judge sustained. Mark Agnifilo, he ain't scared. He came right back. Did you see anyone help Puffy commit prostitution? He said no. He said, when you were at Bad Boy, how did you feel as a group? Derek Ferguson said, we all felt the need to be great. We all felt like a family. Mark Agnifilo brings up a text message from September 29th, 2017. This is around the time that Derek Ferguson is getting ready to leave Bad Boy after 19 years. My phone over there, that's why I keep looking over there. I'm waiting for somebody to pick it up and try to run with it so I can do a Lawrence Taylor tackle on him.
Oh, shit. Uncle and Tommy.
Derek Ferguson texts Puffy in 2017 when he was leaving the company. I learned so much from Puff.
Now, this is a common strategy that we're watching Diddy's team employ, and I wonder what y'all think about this. They're basically showcasing when anybody left Diddy's organization, it was never bad blood, and they often thank Diddy for teaching them, for being there for them, for his demeanor, and for being a nice guy to them. You get what I'm saying? So that's why, they're putting hey, why would you send him this thank you message, but now you're saying he's a piece of shit? Now, this guy who's on the stand is not saying he's a piece of shit. He's keeping it straight business-wise. He's the CFO or former CFO of the company. But they like to put that out there to be like, everybody's been having good experiences according to their voluntary text messages before they had to come to court or before they know that there's a money grab going on. So what do you want to believe? Them saying it back then, or obviously the AUSA is saying, well, you know, that's what happens when you're a victim. Like, you still like say what up to your abuser, right?
Puffy had a great business mind, and Puffy was not afraid to set high goals. I was pushed by Puffy to work hard. Puffy's work ethic was really high. And Puffy told him that the difference between being great and the greatest is caring. Mark Agnifilo asked Derek Fisher. Somebody gave me a super chat. EV, thank you. Mark Agnifilo asked asked Derek Ferguson, you're a man of faith. Objection? Sustained? Watch my phone right there. Watch that phone. Thank you.
My boy,
Mr. Ferguson,
you're in a sprint.
you're a man that believes in faith. Objection? That's the second time Mark asked. Mark is trying to bring up Derek's religious affiliation. Then he says, Mr. Ferguson, you're a religious man, right? He said, yeah. He said, Mr. Ferguson, you sit on the board of the charter school in Harlem that Puffy started with another dude that is a charter school for the Harlem community for the 6th grade to the 12th grade. Derek Ferguson said, yes, I sit on the board of directors, and Puffy also opened up another one in the Bronx, in the Boogie Down, the birthplace of hip hop. Watch that phone right there. Thank you, baby. He opened up a charter school in Harlem and one in the Bronx. Watch that phone right there for me, please. Appreciate y'all. Thank you, man. Derek Ferguson said, yes, he did. I sit on the board. Check this part out. Then Mark Agnifilo asked Derek Ferguson straight out, do you think highly of Mr. Combs? And Derek Ferguson paused. For about 10 seconds, he did not answer. And then he said, I don't know how to answer that. Then Mark Agnifilo said, I have no more questions. Then the prosecution got up. She asked a couple questions, and she did this. This is Slavic. She said, Mr. Ferguson, you would just ask some questions about, have you ever seen Puffy commit violence or coercion or commit crimes? Have you ever been to a hotel room with Puffy? He said no. What was the other one? Have you ever been to the personal residence of Puffy? Derek Ferguson said no. She said, I have no more questions. Mark Agnifilo jumped up. He said, I ain't got but one question. I ain't got but one question. He said, Mr. Ferguson, you were just asked by the U.S. attorney, have you ever been to Puffy's house or to a hotel room? He said, yeah. He said, Is it when Puffy is in his house, or isn't it when he's in a hotel room? That's his personal life. I have no more questions.
Yo, why Unc giving it up like that? Why Unc giving it up like that? Yo, Unc with the walk off in the fedora is crazy. Watch that phone. Watch that phone, Unc. They gonna steal your shit. Watch that motherfucking phone.
So, what's up? How you doing? You looking at me? You looking at me? Come here. Come here. You want to say what's up to my people? I'm live on YouTube. Come here.
Oh shit. Unc bagging him live.
You a tourist, ain't you? You not from?
What the fuck? Unc know the zodiac signs. Bitch, you a tourist. Bring your ass over here.
Man, where y'all from?
Morocco.
From Morocco. All right, peace. I knew they was tourists. See, when you grow up here, you can see tourists. You see them right off the bat. You know exactly.
Oh, he said tourist. Oh, okay. I thought he said Taurus. I'm like, huh? Unc reading zodiac signs? Oh, hell nah. Unc devious. He said they're a Taurus, so they were from Morocco.
What's up, bro? What's happening? That's me right there. That's my phone. I see it.
That's me right there.
So, what the prosecution was trying to say is that what Puffy did in his personal life, in his house or in his hotel, that's business too, because his security was there, or he had an assistant there. Like, he ain't got no personal life. But Mark Agnifilo, CEO, ain't that his personal life? What's up, baby? Ain't that his personal life? When he had a hotel, ain't that his personal life? What's going on with you, man? What's that? Everything good? Everything good? Ain't that his personal life? When he at his house? Do we have, you know what I'm saying? So
now that's a very important point that Mark Agnifilo, I think it's an easy point to make. And, you know, I'm not trying to, like, you know, cast any aspersions on any of the lawyers. I think that's an easy point, but it's also a quintessential point of the whole, like, charge. That's why I think Mark Agnifilo does it. Yo, you're saying that this guy's running a RICO enterprise because he fucks a lot of girls or like his girl to be fucked by a lot of men. Okay, that's his personal life. Yes, he's rich. Yes, he has some money. But now y'all brought his CFO up there to act like his CFO is the chief financial officer or the chief freak-off officer. That's not true. These guys didn't know what the hell this guy was doing on a kinky version in his private life. They didn't know that. So for you to say that the RICO is Diddy just doing all this shit, that's not fair.
there was a lot of gamesmanship going on with that. You know, that's what happened. That's what happened. They talked about some shortened court sessions. I got to get them dates. July the 5th won't be a full day. July the 11th won't be. Elijah, get my phone for me right there, man.
Yeah, nobody steal all the shit, bro.
And the 20th won't be a full day. Say what's up to my people, man. Say what's up. Excuse me.
What's up, y'all?
Hey, my man, come here. Say what's up. Tell them who you are, man.
Elijah Pippen. YouTube, Elijah Pippen 895.
You gotta speak louder than that. Tell them. Right? Jay, come promote your Instagram, your YouTube, all that.
It's a good coach.
Your personal coaching and all that.
Yeah,
Tell them who you are.
Yeah, this is Coach J Con. You go hit me on Instagram. But I just started a new YouTube channel for this court.
Hey, Unc passing it on. Shout out to everybody else.
Cassie, the main witness, in my estimation, was more of a defense witness helping Puff than hurting Puff. We saw what happened yesterday with Mia. Brian Steele body slammed her. Another victim Victim number 3, not even coming. Capricorn Clark testified against Puff. She committed perjury 3 times on the stand. The only proof that Puffy committed any kind of arson is from her mouth. And she committed perjury on the stand and was compelled to testify by the government. No DNA at Kid Cudi's house, no fingerprints of Puff at Kid Cudi's house, no camera footage of Puffy at Kid Cudi's house, no video footage of Puffy at Kid Cudi's house, no eyewitnesses at Kid Cudi's house. The DNA sample that came back from the LA Police Department came back to a female, and they destroyed that. They destroyed, the LA Police Department destroyed
that was weird.
The DNA that came back to a woman, so there's no arson. The bribery joint, we just saw that today. That's questionable. I mean, man, Cassie got on the stand and told Puff, I want to have your baby. I can't wait till we have a baby. Happy Father's Day. I want you to spend Christmas and New Year's with me. I don't want you to spend Christmas and New Year's with Kim Porter. I love you. I want to do freak offs too with you. I was just thinking about doing one. She dated Kid Cudi for a year while she was dating Puff. You know she was giving him some. You know what I'm saying? She was dating an NFL player while she was dealing with Puff. Cassie and Puffy loved each other. They asked her on the stand, do you hate Puffy? Cassie said no.
Now, I will say this, and this is where we get into the weeds a little bit, where we start to, I love Unk's delivery, but he might have a POV. And remember, we're not in court. One thing I learned from that Tory Lanez case so much. That's why some of you, I'm like, yo, damn, why does someone sound like you're not with Tory sometimes? I'm like, bro, what we should be focused on here when we're covering these things is really what the real temperature is and what's going to happen. So even if you feel like Diddy's innocent, we got to listen to the truth, not skewed. You know what I mean? Now, that's what I'm saying. Unk might have a POV. He might be like, man, Diddy old school player, man. That nigga ain't guilty of shit. We have to be careful of that, because if we listen to that for 2-3 weeks and Diddy gets found guilty, we're going to be like, how do we get found guilty? Like, no, we that's why also I try to give different people, Attorney Simone, we try to give different people an opportunity to kind of give their...
Her attorneys were really brilliant. They didn't sue...
Sorry. To give their, understanding of what this, what they believe is happening. Where's Lauren Collin at? Damn. I feel like different people lean different ways, though. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, Lauren is... Yeah, we're not seeing... Yeah, Unk really the fastest person with this. I ain't even going to cap with you. So there's this idea of Mia. We don't know where Mia is. Not Mia. I mean, Gina. Well, she got me blocked, so I can't look her up on this shit. But has Gina mentioned anything? Has she spoke out about anything? Christina Karam, she has a lawyer, so she can't be running and hiding. Has she spoken about anything?
Again, the RICO.
So I'm assuming that there are records. So I want to know from the CEO, from the accountants, from whoever disperses their checks, whoever does a direct deposit, give me your records. How do you keep track of this money? How does he get paid? How does he accept his salary? There are ways to track it.
Well, that's why the testimony of Derek Ferguson, who's on the stand, the CFO, is so important, talking about how Combs gets a salary and disbursements and understanding the flow of money and credit cards and things of that nature, and mixing personal and company resources. This is a question I'll throw this to Candace. This question from B. Isn't the son's mom being in the court give them access to who's testifying and allowing them to release those videos like Mia's and maybe bribe jurors too? I mean, this is assuming a lot and making quite the allegations, but I guess it goes to the point of, you know, the defendant's family and friends could be in that courtroom seeing the testimony of a witness who's testifying under a pseudonym. Is there a